Welcome to InCast, InJoy Health Education's podcast for dedicated healthcare professionals, educators, and administrators who are passionate about making a difference, encouraging healthy outcomes, and finding innovative ways to engage and empower new families and staff. Here's your host, Debbie Young. She's been a childbirth educator and doula for almost 30 years and came to InJoy based on her love for educating families.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to be talking about creating a successful childbirth education class with Vonda Gates. Vonda's been a certified childbirth educator since 1991, working with families and teachers in the hospital setting. She became one of the first 20 DONA-certified doulas in 1993. As the owner of BirthBasic, Vonda assists local families with the challenges of childbearing year and facilitates birth professionals who choose the path of certified childbirth educator, doula, or hug your baby teacher. Currently, she enjoys the talented women she meets as an approved trainer for ICEA childbirth education and doula certifying programs. She also serves ICEA on the executive board. Vonda is pleased to be recognized by the Improving Birth Coalition as a mother-friendly nurse. She's been happily married to Roger for 38 years and delights in 3 grown children and 1 grandson, all living nearby in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. Welcome, Vonda.
Hey, good morning, Debbie. It's so good to hear your voice.
Yeah, I'm so glad you could join us this morning. I heard that you even are joining us after a late night flight.
I did. I got in at 1 a.m. I didn't even know they flew airplanes that late.
Well,
but they do from Chattanooga into Chattanooga.
What were you doing out so late?
I know, that was a late one. I was in the San Francisco area this weekend facilitating the Childbirth Educator Workshop approved by ICEA in San Francisco with a large hospital group there in one of their medical centers. And we had just a really fun time. You're catching me on a workshop high.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know. It's something about being in the room with so many other professionally minded women who enjoy the same topic. We're all kind of birthies, I call us, and we love this topic. And to spend the 16 hours that are required for our workshop talking about my favorite subject. And that's what they hear from me. This is my favorite subject. So, and it is for all of them. So it was really a delightful weekend. But yeah, in really early this morning.
That's awesome. And thanks for continuing to take time to be with us, even though you might need another cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So can I just ask, I'm just curious, these 18 people that were at your workshop, were they all nurses or were there some lay people in the workshop? How did that work out?
Yeah. It's quite a mix, and it was that way this time. We had some nurses like me, and then we had other people who are going to be developing a private class. We also had some RNs who were teaching for a long time and were planning to move into a private class as their career was kind of progressing. And we had a mix of very experienced people, and then we had some people who had never taught a class.
Wow.
And we had mostly people who had babies, but we had one person who did not have children. So it's quite a mix, and I love the dynamics. And then what really happens is you see the group starting to share the information, and they teach one another, and then they teach me. I always learn something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what a blessing to be around these women, because we all love the same topic. And when we put that educator hat on for childbirth, it's the electricity and the fun. I'm kind of addicted to it.
Well, thank you for what you do in not only training parents, but training other educators. I always think about it this way. If I am teaching a childbirth education for 12 families, I'm impacting 12 births. But if I'm training 12 other educators or doulas, I'm impacting the number of births that they all do. Is that how you think about it too?
Oh, yeah, it's exciting. Yes. And I think it's helpful for somebody who has this passion like you and I do, and the people who are listening, I'm sure they share this passion. That's why they joined us. That when they're putting together a career, so I want to be a childbirth educator, look long term. Look at your career path should include becoming a trainer, possibly.
Sure.
And I think sometimes new educators coming in, I like to kind of put that out there and say, this is a possibility, and really satisfying to look at the whole career, and that should be part of your business plan, your career plan when you start, to say, think long term. So become an educator, share your passion, which I loved doing for so many years, and as I was raising my family. And then think long term. At some point, you want to turn that experience you've gained of teaching a class around and become a trainer, where now you're sharing how you made that step with other people who are coming into the profession. And I've just found it really satisfying.
That's awesome. And I can see how there would be, probably a good number of very passionate women who are going to go on and go into that realm, or maybe add other services like you've done with the doula work and with the Hug Your Baby work. So, adding to your repertoire is good, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
All right. So let's talk about the actual childbirth education class to the parents for a minute. If you could just choose one or two things that stand out foremost in your mind, what would you say makes a childbirth education class successful?
Oh, isn't that an important question? So you're getting my opinion.
Yes.
Everybody. Yep. So here it is. I truly believe it's relationships. Now, underneath that, you do want to be offering the very best that you can offer. So you want current information. You want to be dealing with the topics your clients want in a timely way that your clients are looking for. Debbie, do you remember back when we offered these really, really long classes? I think when I started our childbirth series at the little hospital that I taught at for so many years was 14 hours.
Mine was 24. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. They were, and that's still out there in places. But I know in my area, people are looking for something shorter. So, but you want to be offering current information and in a format that your clients want. So you have to have a reputable class that you've sat down and developed objectives for your area that are suitable, and you've put together how you're going to deliver those objectives, and then you have a proper evaluation of that class so that your class is fluid and it's going to change and grow and become better and better each time you teach it. So every time you're going to go back and review and then make changes and try it again and review and make changes. And that offers, after a number of years, a really good style. You have your style in place. So you have to have that. But on top of that, I think the clients that I meet today, they want relationship. And they're looking for rapport.
Are you starting to develop that rapport even before your class, since class times have been shortened over the years, or do you just meet them for the first time?
No, you have to have right from the first click when they're looking for you. It has to look like you, and there has to be something that reaches out. So your rapport has to start either with that first phone call or that first click on the computer. So many of our clients find us at our websites or at your facility's website, your hospital website. And I can't tell you how many times nurses express at workshops that sometimes they're a bit frustrated because they're teaching a class with a hospital, and it's difficult. It takes more than 3 clicks to find their class. And then it doesn't really express that warmth and that rapport. So our clients are looking for that right from the very start. And if you look at some of the research about what helps people do well in birth, the top 3 that I know I just showed this weekend at the workshop talk about relationships with that partner and the family, and then relationships with the care providers.
So they're midwife or doctor too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we're part of that circle of care. Now, ICEA talks about a circle of care with our client in the middle. And the childbirth educator is part, and the doula are all, and the lactation consultant are all part of that circle of care. And we have some tremendous research that points to what moms are looking for: rapport, relationships with those care providers. So I know sometimes I hear childbirth educators thinking they want more technology, and yes, we can use technology in the classroom, but in my mind, it has to be increasing the relationship, or I'm not going to try it. Because I think our clients are looking for credible relationships, for warmth, for somebody that they can come to and ask questions with. So you want this class that you spend a lot of time developing to kind of exude that warmth and that relationship and that reaching out to saying, I love this topic. You can do this. And a class that doesn't just spew knowledge, and that's important that we have the correct knowledge, but overall says it gives confidence. And I think that comes with rapport and relationships.
Yeah.
So.
And I know that because I know you from outside the podcast, that you are a huge proponent of adult learning theories. And I just wondered if you would talk a little bit, because just like your class in California, we have people of all different levels of knowledge, and some are educators, some are becoming educators, and some may be practitioners of some other health profession. Can you talk to us a little bit more about adult education, adult learning theory, and how that plays out in the classroom?
Yes. And sometimes for our newer passionate birthies coming in, there's a lot of big words that we spew about with adult education, just like we do with our class. So pedagogical and andragogical. But basically it's talking about what kinds of things appeal to an adult learner with an adult brain. And that's different than how we approach a childlike brain or a child learner. And I so agree with this. And I had a whole study group of 2, Debbie, my children, yeah, that I watched as they were learning. And I found those ideas to be true, at least with my little study group, that prior to puberty, with the childlike learning, you can just spew the knowledge out there, just throw it at them and say, this is true. And it's almost like I could just kind of like pour it in their little brains and okay, I understand that. And however, we did see the difference at puberty when that mature brain developed and the adult brain, inexperienced for sure, but adult nonetheless, it was different. Now we had the things that adults look for. They are more interested in what their peers are saying. They are more interested in something from their background and experience they had that they're bringing with them that shades everything they think about a certain topic because they had an experience or a friend had an experience. And so now you can't just throw that info at them and expect that they're going to take your word for it. So you have to ask and allow them time to express their beliefs and what their experience has been in the class. And that is so important. So it's not, I think sometimes somebody might think, oh, I'm going to become an educator. And so I'm going to stand up front and I'm just going to say what's true. This is what's true. That's really not what it's about in an adult class. And I'm sure we can all think of classes we've attended like that, where it was very clear that you were not invited to say anything, either because of the way the room was set up or the stance or how the presentation was made. But yet I'm thinking, well, I don't know if I believe that or not. But the educator's never going to hear me because they didn't even invite me to speak. So
well, I think that
doesn't work for adults.
Yeah, that's really important because I've had classes where people just personality-wise were reluctant to speak and share, and then some other classes where everybody was kind of throwing in ideas. Is there something specific to creating a classroom setting or body language, or what specific tactics can we use to elicit
Oh,
that
you're just
kind of,
giving me
yeah,
goosebumps, Debbie, because these are all my favorite topics at the workshops.
good.
So, right, and I know the way I like to run a workshop is to model what we're talking about in the workshop. So often I ask the people in workshops to kind of role play with me, like they're the class and I'm the educator. So, but right from the moment they start to contact your class, so that might be your website or a phone call to you, you want to have this open body language or the tone of voice that you use. And I talk about both at the workshop, what open body language looks like, facing towards your clients, your arms in a welcoming position, the relaxed countenance of your body, a smile. I make it a purposeful exercise at the start of my class to greet every person who comes through the door in some way. And so that means you have to always be facing the door so you see them. And then to introduce them to someone else who's come in previously, or if they're the first one, to greet them openly and with a smile. The room has to be arranged in such a way that everybody can see one another. And I know that's difficult with some facilities. When I used to teach in a hospital setting, it meant I had to come an hour early so that I could rearrange the room. And then, of course, you have to stay late so you can put it back, or you're going to be in trouble with if it's in a church. We taught some classes in church, the deacons would say, you didn't put the room back, or in a hospital setting, you have to put it back. So we talk about those kinds of things to make the room more inviting. And I think sometimes people kind of laugh when we say we talk about icebreakers, or they might think, well, that's kind of nice to have an icebreaker. No, it's more than just nice. Those icebreakers that we set up to work in our classroom, those are the invitations to our clients to talk and interact. And I truly believe this: if you can get your clients to talk to you or to each other in the first 5 minutes of that class starting, and you must start promptly for adult learners, so that means you also have to come and be prepared. The classroom has to be prepared, so you're not pulling babies out and DVDs out when it's 6:30 or 7 o'clock and it's supposed to start. You have to be ready. But if you could get them talking in the first 5 minutes to you or to each other, they're going to keep talking through the whole class. And then you have that wonderful situation where they're actually informing and talking and teaching one another.
Yeah, and that happens both when you're training other educators and in the classroom, I bet.
Right. It's the same thing. We all have opinions as adults. Most of us, not everybody, but most of us like to express those, like to share. And then there's another bonus that just over the years I've seen it. If there are hurts in this adult person's background, or pain, or abuse, I have seen where this group teaching allows that adult who's harboring, maybe they don't even realize the hurt or the pain or the fear is there, but when they can hear their peers talking about making choices, positive choices, sometimes that can be healing to someone who has had that choice taken away.
And is that because
yeah,
it's coming from another student like them?
Yes.
Okay.
Peers.
Okay.
Because they're skeptical of the person in charge. It's often that person in charge who took that choice from them and abused it. And then I have letters from people from my classes who, and they do that. It's so nice to get those letters because they think I did it. They think I'm this great educator. It's not me. It was the class. It was their peers talking about making choices, right or wrong, good for them, maybe not good for other people. It doesn't matter that they're absolutely accurate and all of this. It was just that they heard other people going through that process of what's good for me, what is the best thing for me, and that brought healing to this person sitting there listening. And I think that's what's so exciting about a group childbirth class.
Definitely. So, and if that's the only thing they took away from the class, it would be worth it.
Right.
So.
Oh, worth it. Oh, more than worth it. In fact, one of my favorite remembrances in the years past was a woman who told me she had some abusive issues and originally didn't want to join the class. She won it at a baby fair. We always gave a class away, and came to us and said, you should give this to someone else because I shouldn't come to this. And my partner and I, my childbirth educator partner and I, talked her into coming along with her partner. And they actually showed up, but they didn't say a word, Debbie. They never, which is typical of someone with these kinds of hurts. And said nothing through the entire class. And I remember at the end, as I was cleaning up, I really felt I had failed them. Here we talked her into coming, and I was thinking, oh, I should have listened to her. She told us this wasn't going to be right for her, and I was cleaning up, and then I went out into the parking lot, and there they were waiting to talk to me.
Oh.
And it turned out not only, but they had said nothing through the whole class, but it sank in, and they wanted to hire me as a doula. They were talking about the plans they made, and I thought, I so misread them. I know. And in the end, she had sent me a beautiful letter and saying how helpful I was. It was not me. It was that group process of the class that brought about some healing for her. Hearing her peers making decisions best for them, and the discussion that happened in that room brought about some healing for her, and I've never forgotten it. Yeah. So
I know that you've
it's
talked.
exciting.
Yeah, you've talked about that. Educators need to include not only cognitive but emotional and spiritual facets in their class, and it seems like for this couple, all of those things probably came together for them without you even knowing. Yeah.
I had no idea, thinking I had totally failed them, just because they said nothing. But now if you look back, Penny has written to us a lot about those survivors.
And you're talking about Penny Simkin.
Yes, yeah. And she wrote a book, When Survivors Give Birth, just an amazing book to me. And that's what she's, often when we're looking at our class, 1 out of 4 in that class may have some verbal or physical abuse in their background. And you will see sometimes that exhibits as not saying anything. Mm-hmm. And I probably, here I thought I had failed her, but actually I probably should have recognized, that maybe something else was happening. But it was exciting. And then you mentioned the 3 ways, I hope I'm not jumping ahead for you, that we talk about what kinds of teaching we should do. We definitely want to have the cognitive, the types of transitions that people make in birth and changing of the family. And so they are definitely changing in the physical sense. And we talk about that in a class, the weight gain and the comfort measures and everything. But then there's also the emotional changes that are happening. So a good class has to think about and have objectives that are going to allow discussion of those emotional changes. And then the third one is there are spiritual changes. And let me define that. That means that everything that this mom or this family unit, however you want to look at it, knows to be true about the created world around her is changing. Many of the things she knows to be true are changing as her body as this new person is coming on board. And so I know when I was a young educator, I talked a lot about the physical changes. And that seemed to be what was really easy. And I still do today. We're going to talk about those. But I think as I've grown and my class has grown, now I make way to talk about emotional changes and the spiritual changes too. And for our clients, that brings about this kind of well-rounded experience for the class.
Yeah, and I think that when we think about birth as a whole human experience, both for the mom and her partner, what you're saying has so much credibility. So.
Right. And it gives us satisfaction as an educator when you add those two, because when we see that growth in our clients, that is very satisfying to us too. So it's worth taking time to develop that in your class, because I think that's going to keep you in this business over the long haul. So that, like me, 28 years or almost 30 years later, I'm still doing the same thing.
Right.
So
When you
Yep.
were at this weekend's workshop, how did you help those educators understand how to bring the emotional and spiritual facets of education? Do you kind of role playing, or how do you do that?
Yes. And I do a lot of role playing in the class. And, that was introduced to me at the very first ICEA workshop that I went to years ago. That was the first time I left my children. They were 3 and 6 years old. And I headed off to go to this workshop event. And one of the educators there, and I am desperately trying to think of her name because she was such an amazing educator, and it's not coming to my mind right now, demonstrated some role playing, demonstrated how to do that, which makes it so much more easy. I guess I learn really quickly when I can see somebody doing it, and that's so helpful. To me, that's I guess one of the ways I learn best. And after she did that, I came home just really ready to do more role playing in my class. So we do a lot of role playing in the workshop where everybody kind of becomes a class, and they can see how to bring those other 2 facets of talking about the emotions of birth and then the spiritual changes of birth into your workshop. And then you have to get to the bottom line, Debbie. And for me, in a class, it's not going to appear in your class unless you're very intentional about it. So you have to have objectives. You have to have a class where you have written out objectives, and you have to go back and look at your objectives and say, am I putting those emotional concepts in their time? Am I making time to actually have those discussions, and how am I doing it? And the same with the spiritual. So how am I doing it? It has to be part of that lesson plan, or it's not going to happen, is it?
Right, because it's so much easier just to convey knowledge than to delve into the things that are actually going to be helpful and alleviate fears that, the other 2 pieces actually probably are better at. So.
Right, and our classes have shortened, which is true. So sometimes allowing educators to see that they do need to take time in the class for this kind of activity. One of the first things I hear from people is, oh, it's so short these days, and I have so much information for them. And you're going, yes, that's true, but the actual truth is you cannot teach it all. And you're going to have to make some choices anyway, as far as just the knowledge component, because it's massive, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. We could just sit up there and just start running through that PowerPoint, lickety-split, and you could even start talking faster. Right.
Well, and one of the things that I tell new educators or doulas is that our job is not to throw up the knowledge that we have to someone else, but to what you started saying in the beginning was, as you're creating the relationships, understanding what this class needs. That could look altogether different than the last class, right?
Right. So we kind of want to support our classes with other ways for our clients to get to that info, and we can do that with Inside Out classroom ideas, where we're pointing them at our website, to our business Pinterest page, maybe, where we have boards that have knowledge on several different topics that might come up. We can do that by incorporating a class book into our class that has links to clips and discussions and handouts. We used to hand out so many brochures and handouts. I really don't in class anymore. I have a book that I can point to. Oh, you can download the fetal kick count here. You can go to the business Pinterest page and look at this discussion. There's a board on it or several boards. And so bringing those things in for the knowledge component means we can free up time for discussion and demonstration and re-demonstration. That's in the class.
It's so important, especially if you don't have 12, 14, 24 hours. You have to get it in there. So
right. And I took, gosh, I'm going to mention Penny Simpkin's name again. I'm kind of a Penny Simpkin groupie.
Yeah, she's my hero too.
She is my hero. That's such a good way to put it. And she charged us at, we had a Lamaze ICEA conference a couple years ago where we were together, and she was our keynote speaker, and she really charged us that we must be teaching a type of a breath for comfort at every class. And sometimes that doesn't happen because an educator just doesn't know how to make that happen. And so I know at my workshop, I talk about how to spiral that skill through the entire class, starting from the very first hour you meet, starting with a very concrete way to start that breath for comfort, and then how to, with each time you bring it back, after the break, before we leave that night, when we come back the next day, before the break, after the break, before we leave, where you're spiraling, teaching that comfort breath till it becomes much more complex by the end of our time together, and your adult learners are doing it. I remember, Penny, to a rousing cheer and applause from the audience, that we must teach that at every class.
And that's a great way to teach not only that concept, but any concept that's kind of the base for how we're going to do this. So
yeah, we spiral it through, going from very concrete to the abstract. And these are things that you talk about at a workshop when you're putting together your class. We must be that intentional, thoughtful educator that has those objectives in our class and has thought out how to create that relationship, that rapport.
And so I think that speaks to the concept of our long-term goals as educators and the things that we need to keep in mind. You just mentioned the objectives and how to spiral through your class with important concepts. Are there other key components to fostering long-term goals that educators should keep in mind?
Oh, I have all my favorite ones. You're talking about my favorite topic, Debbie. Yeah. So, and I did mention it is important to be current. So just ways to keep yourself current with what's in your classroom, because it's kind of always changing, isn't it, Debbie?
Always.
Yeah. And our adults are reading. They're reading their magazines and things they're seeing online. So we have to be current, because, if we're not, if we're still talking about something that's outdated, so a lot of our clients are kind of bright these days. They're very bright people, and they may recognize. So we do want to be current. And I think part of that is being a certified educator has been important to me, because that has kept me within a body that helps me to be current, because I have to recertify, and that helps me to just keep current by getting to conference. So our class has to be definitely very current with the knowledge we're presenting. But then we also have to have a way to talk about things like what might be barriers to our client that they're bringing. And we don't know what that is with each client. There's several things that can be a barrier to approaching this birth that's coming up. And we want to have ways within our class that we allow our clients to kind of approach those barriers and maybe recognize for the first time it's there, and then give them ways to overcome that. So that might exhibit then as fear. And we want to give them a way in class to say, how can we approach that fear? How can we overcome that? And then, of course, we're childbirth educators. We talk about stress, don't we?
Yep.
So there's positive and negative stress. There's a lot of stress that prompts me to do things that are good for me, and it's healthy. But then we have all the negative, and for decades now, we have talked about stress, haven't we? That's kind of what we make fun of when you see a childbirth educator in the movies. She's talking about stress. But some of our clients, again, may not even realize the stress of their lifestyle or some of the choices we all make that then bring stress into our lives. And of course, that stress is going to come to bear when we push that body to the work it's going to have to do for labor and birth. And those three changes that have to happen physically, emotionally, and spiritually, we sometimes see that stress really exhibit itself.
And the tools you can give, yeah.
Yep.
And
yes.
I found that the tools that you can give are not only useful for the birth itself, but those are actually tools that parents take away and use in the rest of their life, right?
These are life skills, aren't they, Debbie?
Yep.
Yeah, and I do like educators to realize you are teaching life skills. And when we talk with adults in our classes, the words we use are so important. Our clients often hang on every word that care providers use, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we all know how they come to our class and my care provider said this and then walked out the door. How often has that happened? And I sometimes wonder, I don't think they realized how their client hung on those very words. And so in the class, we want to be using very positive words and pictures and stories, and to realize that our clients are bringing these barriers with them. We don't realize what they are for everybody, but that the words we use to describe what we're doing, so we can be very technical about the actual moment of birth, and we might say things like describing the baby, this is pushing the baby out, there's a lot of pain at the perineum. We can get very technical about that. Or we can use words like, this is the moment that your baby emerges and comes to your chest, or to your arms is my favorite one. And that's where baby will live, for the next period of life, right in your arms, right there on your skin. And so realizing our words. So sometimes I think it's really important to see yourself teach at least once, to realize what your cues are for these kinds of things that your clients might be picking up. And we've often discussed, I am on the executive board with ICEA, and so our programs are always kind of under the microscope with us. One of the things you have to do is send in an observed class. And somebody could do that in person, but I really encourage educators at least once in your career to film yourself, record it in some way, and how helpful that is to see your body language and the phrases and terms you use that are either creating stress for your clients or helping to relieve that stress or giving them something to grab onto. So we've kept it in the program still, where it's just important to have that opportunity to see yourself and how you address issues in your class.
Well, and I think too that we, as educators, we're always asking for evaluations from our students, because we want to know, as you mentioned, what did we do right? What could we have done better? How can we change? But you can't evaluate yourself without watching yourself teach. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's great.
I still have the VHS tapes from years ago. And, Debbie, I look at those tapes now and, well, honestly, I think they're just awful. Teaching, new educator, hospital setting, huge class. I've changed so much from that. And I think that's where evals come in, that continual reevaluating. I've kept all the evals over the years. I have a huge file of them.
Too. Yep.
But that triangle of, creating objectives, adding your learning activities, and then the eval. And you go back to your objectives. It becomes this circular, fluid motion that really allows you to become the best educator. And I point out, we all have different skills, don't we? Different talents, different skills, different passions. So our classes are going to look kind of different, and they should.
Sure.
Because, when you create a class that highlights the very best of your passions, your clients are going to see that, and that will add to the rapport and the relationship.
Well, and I think that's something you said before about creating that relationship from the very beginning is what really helps you write your learner-centered objectives, right?
Right. And learner-centered is such a great word. So it's not objectives saying, here's what I'm going to do as the educator. It's objectives that say, here is what I'm looking for in response from my clients. And there's 3 kinds of objectives. And we want all 3 in the class, and we want to be able to evaluate all 3. So there's a cognitive objectives where you are just presenting the information, and there's affective objectives where you're asking, what is your opinion? How do you feel about this topic? And then the psychomotor, where you're actually going to see them exhibit some kind of a skill, say maybe a double hip squeeze, or some kind of a skill that you've actually demonstrated in the class, and then your class is going to do it. So again, just having that mindset that you want a class where there's time for those kinds of things for adult learners.
Very good. Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I know that, I have been doing this as long as you have, and still some things today you've piqued my interest, and I'm going to be doing some reading and looking for some additional things I can do in my own classes, and I hope that our audience has really learned some things also. Is there any one big takeaway you want to give as we end up our discussion this morning?
Well, I guess if I can, if you're going to ask me, and realize I am on the ICEA board, but we were really challenged by our supporting team in Raleigh, North Carolina, a year ago to define what ICEA is, who we are. And they had a job with us, Debbie, because we kept coming back to what we do. We kept saying, well, here's what we do. And we were so excited about what we do. And they kept saying, no, that's not what we're looking for. Who are you? Who are you? And at the end of that morning session, they had to drag it out of us, Debbie. We're such doers, all of us. You know, they had to drag it out of us. We came up with 3 C's that I am so excited about, because I do think it is who ICEA is, who I am, and who ICEA is, and what we do as it affects the do part of us. But here's what we are, and what we came up with. These 3 C's were very important to us. The first one was compassion. And today, in this world where it just seems so harsh sometimes, we are about compassion in this area of childbirth. And I really see that. That's who I am. And then the second one was collaboration. So at the workshop, we talked quite a bit about creating that team and about being the circle of care. Now, that circle of care came back from some of the first boards of ICEA. And so collaboration truly is who we are. And so as an educator, you want to be a professional birth educator who collaborates with the other professionals around you and with your clients. And then the last one that ICEA is so about is choice. And sometimes that word can be charged, but we mean choice in it is the client's. She has so many choices presented to her, and that she is part of that team who makes a decision of what will happen that day, and that she hears that in our class. So our 3 C's, compassion, collaboration, and choice, I'm just really, really excited about.
And I do see that every childbirth educator can really think about and understand how those 3 C's can not only affect an organization, but can affect the individual educators. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, and I appreciate you being here today.
Oh, I've enjoyed it, but you know, this is my favorite topic.
I did know that. That's why we had you on the show.
Yes, you did know that. I get excited about it, don't I?
Yeah. So thanks, Vonda.
It's so good to be doing what you're made to do. You're welcome.
This episode of InCast is complete. Tune in regularly to hear more insightful conversations. And be sure to visit InJoyHealthEducation.com to see how InJoy can help you inspire families and staff through our diverse childbirth and parenting teaching solutions. Or call us at 1-800-326-2082.